All right, this is just going to be a very quick version of how to deal with shadows in Photoshop. First off, I've already pre-selected and layer masked this goose or whatever this is. Now, I'm just going to mention, if you are going to use a layer mask, you might want to crop your image before you bring it over, just so you don't have a bunch of extra space on your document. Totally up to you, but I think it just makes it a little bit easier. Okay, so I'm going to drag this guy over with the move tool. It's going to be rather large, so I'm going to position it with Control T and scale it down. The first thing that you're going to have to notice when you start bringing over items to a background is you've got to match the same kind of color with the background, the same kind of vibrance and levels and all of that. So just bear in mind that more than likely you're going to have to make changes to your image. It's not going to look right just right off the bat. Secondly, you're probably going to want to take little pieces of whatever's in your background and make copies of that to put in front. So, you know, if I'm going to have this on this beach, I probably need to take some little pieces of sand, and you might need to make a new layer and use some of your tools, your clone stamp or something. Now, you're not going to want to use a soft brush because that's going to look funny, but you might use these, I want to call them crunchy brushes, but some of these other types of brushes. And there's categories that have like natural brushes and things like that, but brushes that aren't going to be perfect, because that's what we're gonna need. So I could take my clone stamp and I could go ahead and take little pieces here and put some, see here, in front of. And you can rotate your brush too. So if you need to rotate it around, window brush, and you can just rotate it. And that way you don't have like the same little piece sticking out every single time that you stamp down. Okay, so if you needed to make it look a little bit more like it's down in there, that's how you're going to go about that. So just remember that you've got those options available to you. But now let's say I've got my bird and I need to add a shadow so it looks somewhat realistic. Well, I'm going to be on my bird layers. I'm going to be sure I'm on the right layer. And then notice the shadows that are already existing in the image. So these are all going off that direction, meaning the sun is over here someplace. As always, too, make sure that on your layer mask, if you're seeing any lines anywhere, that you paint those lines out. Like right here, I can see a line, so I'm painting this out here around the edges of this mask. And you could take a big, huge black brush and go all the way around your image if you wanted to, just to be on the safe side. But all right, but anyway, to add the shadow, I'm going to click here. I'm going to add the layer style and drop shadow. And we're not going to use it as it is because it's not going to work. And you can see I'm going to have to go around the edges here because this is a problem, but it's going to be on its own layer anyway, so none of that really matters too much just yet. Okay, so I've got this in here. I just want to look at the current shadows, and I want to make this shadow match as much as I can. So I have to decide kind of like how dark is it going to be, and then on size, that's going to make it, you know, different as well. Now, whenever you pull on the shadow, you can move it around. So you can actually like move it over here just to kind of see if it matches a little bit of what you got going on there. So it needs to be kind of sharp because these are kind of sharp, like so. Don't worry about the size. We can resize it and all that later. Multiply here, you can change on the blend mode, change the opacity to try to match it. So this looks pretty much the same color and all of that. All right, so you're going to hit OK. And then you're going to right click the drop shadow and go to create layer. And that's going to be creating a layer of the drop shadow. So now you can forget about this a minute. We've just got the drop shadow. So I'm going to click on the drop shadow layer and I'm just going to use plain old eraser to erase these edges that I don't need. And there may be other parts that you don't need too. Like if the sun's coming from straight above, you may only need the part that goes like right under their feet. So you may need to erase some of the shadow. Okay, so now that I've got my shadow on its own layer, I need to make the shadow do what these other shadows are doing. So you can see this guy's straight, this is rotated all the way down, and the shadow is tall. So I'm going to do the same thing here. And again, as you start rotating, you're going to notice that you've got areas that you're going to have to delete. So Control T, I'm going to rotate this guy around so it's more like the way the others are rotating. So you think in terms of the feet are lined up with the feet, so I need to line the butt up with the butt, you know, kind of thing. And obviously, this is not going to go this direction. It's going to be going off this way because that's the direction that those are all going. And you wouldn't actually see, you know, this part that's underneath because it's sticking out here, but you wouldn't really see that. So you have to kind of play with it a bit. All right. Now, there are other transform modes in here. So when you right-click, There's scale, rotate, skew, distort, perspective. So like, for instance, if I grab perspective, then when I pull these, see, it does different things. It's going to give it that sort of thing. Now I'm going to say that this far away, we're probably not going to see the head of this over here. It just kind of depends. It's also going to run into people. So I'd have to kind of figure out how far would this shadow be cast. Probably not near as far as that's going right now. Let me go back to just scale, plain scale. So it's probably going to be smaller because look, this little bag just goes this much through, you know. So you're just going to have to play with it. Now your image is not going to have like a bag sitting here. And then just switch back and forth between whatever modes that you need as you're going. Okay. Rotate. Let's switch me back over to the rotate one. And then you just want to get it matched up to however the direction that all the rest of these are going. And once you get it, then again, take your eraser and get rid of any parts that you don't need. If I don't feel like the head's going to cast a shadow or the shadow's not going to be on the bag, then I can just kind of straighten that up. You may need to use a sharper brush, you know, a harder brush, because these other edges are a little stronger here on the edges. So feel free to adjust that hardness so that you can create a straighter edge. All right. So anyway, just those are things to keep in mind as you're working on your project. Make sure that you do create realistic shadows that you rotate around to match the other shadows. Of course, the easiest thing is to try to find images that do not have shadows, so you don't have to deal too much with those shadows. So good luck to you.